Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 422 of the podcast. And on this episode, I'm talking about Jaylen Brown being traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. Without a doubt, the most polarizing move of the NBA offseason so far is the Boston Celtics trading away Jaylen Brown to the 76ers. I, at this point, believe the consensus is that most people believe this is a terrible trade, trading a 29-year-old for a 36-year-old Paul George and draft picks. The disconnect has always been about how good this player truly is. For example, I've heard some pundits compare what the Celtics did to the Mavericks trading away Luka, and I don't know about you, but that is a bridge too far. For some people with Brown, we are talking about a top 10, maybe even a top 5 player, but for others, he's somewhere in the 20s. The positives are obvious. Jaylen Brown is a 5-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA second team, was Finals MVP, and has career averages of 20 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, and 2.9 assists. I obviously can't speak for everyone, but most people were okay with the idea of the Celtics trading Jaylen Brown when it was for the likes of Kevin Durant or Giannis. To go from that to ending up with Paul George is jarring and is a tough look. I mean, Paul George has become one of those players, a little bit like James Harden, who a lot of people like to make fun of. I think individually he is a very good basketball player, but he hasn't won a lot in the playoffs. I mean, he was good really when LeBron James was on the Miami Heat and the Pacers and the Heat had a rivalry. I think Clippers Paul George was a bit overrated. I liked him with the Oklahoma City Thunder, but that team with him and Westbrook were never really a threat to win anything major. But really, how you feel about this trade has everything to do with how you feel about Jaylen Brown. For some people, this is like trading Jaylen Brown for an older version of himself. But for other people, they are acting like they are trading a guy who is capable of being a franchise best player. Like he's not a B, he is an A option. And in the most extreme examples, there are people out there who believe the Celtics should have built a team around Jaylen Brown and not Jason Tatum. Locally, people have been obsessed with this back and forth about whose team it really was throughout their entire tenure together. Is this Jason Tatum's team? Is this Jaylen Brown's team? And I really do wonder if now that Jaylen Brown is gone, this is going to turn into a Shaq and Kobe type dynamic between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, or are they just going to remain friendly with one another? Early on, people are going to want to tune in to what the matchups between these two are going to be like. Like, is Jaylen Brown really ticked about this trade? And does he want to show the world he is a better basketball player than Jason Tatum? And now is Jason Tatum motivated to prove that he can win big without a teammate as good as Jaylen Brown? I think you can have a real debate about who has more pressure on them going into next season. I think right now, the temperature on the Boston Celtics is quite low. Like if Jason Tatum has an elite all-star season and the Celtics win 50-plus games, I think he's going to get a lot of credit for doing that with this current roster. On the other side, Jaylen Brown now has the pressure of being the final piece of a team that thinks that they can compete big. They have Tyrese Maxey, they have Joel Embiid, and they have a coach who has already won a title in Nick Nurse with the Toronto Raptors, and now you're adding a guy who's won a Finals MVP. I mean, if Brown were to have been traded to a team like Milwaukee, there would not have been a lot of pressure on that team. I mean, it would have been a good story if he could win 50 games and play at an MVP level. Now everyone views the Philadelphia 76ers as the team that has a chance to dethrone the New York Knicks. That is real pressure pressure that is now on Jaylen Brown. And others have asked this question already. Is this what Jaylen Brown really wanted? I mean, we hear the stories that Jaylen Brown wanted to be the best player on a team. Is he going to be viewed as the best player on the Philadelphia 76ers, a team that has a guy in Joel Embiid who just a few years ago won an MVP, and they have a rising star point guard in Tyrese Maxey? We all imagined that Brown wanted to go to a place where he would be the man. Now he's going to a place where they have a big three. Not to mention young guard VJ Edgecombe. When it comes to this trade, nobody was surprised that Jaylen Brown got traded. I mean, he had already been in the market. They tried to get Giannis. It didn't work. We were all just shocked about what the Celtics got back. And before the trade went down, ESPN personality Bobby Marks tweeted this, quote, "I had an analytics guy tell me we view Jaylen Brown as the 7th best player on a team," end quote. It's just so hard to understand how people really feel about this individual player, because there are people out there, there are fans out there that think we are talking about a guy who should have won the MVP award last season. I mean, he led the Boston Celtics to the second best record in the Eastern Conference. They won 56 regular season games, a lot of that without Jason Tatum. Having said that, looking at what the Celtics got back in this trade, it's hard to say that the NBA really values Jaylen Brown as one of the great players in the league right now. And this is probably going to motivate him to have another great season. I mean, this is a guy who was booed by Celtics fans on draft night. He has always had a chip on his shoulder. And in the days after this trade, there have now been rumblings that maybe Jaylen Brown was in control of his fate and was telling the Celtics and other teams the destinations he did not want to go to. So maybe that's why the package back was underwhelming for a guy like Jaylen Brown. The man who orchestrated this trade, Brad Stevens of the Boston Celtics, had a lot to say about this move. Here's one that I found the most interesting. Quote, "The path looked a little bit more challenging with 70% of our cap and such a high percent of our usage tied into 2 players," end quote. The Jaylen Brown contract situation aside, I think this is the thing that most people are baffled by when it comes to this trade. All of a sudden, it's not a good thing for the Boston Celtics to have one of the best duos in all of basketball. I think that is the thing that is challenging to comprehend. Being a bit negative for a second, is this the Celtics getting caught up in the moment because the New York Knicks just won the NBA Finals with one signature star in Jalen Brunson? Is that how the Celtics feel about things? That they no longer need these 2 max guys? That they just need to build around a guy like Jason Tatum? And if so, is that sound thinking? The facts are the facts. They are breaking up a duo that has gone to the NBA Finals twice and won once. And even though they played nearly a decade together, they are just now entering their prime years in the sport of basketball. I mean, Jaylen Brown is inarguably getting better each and every season. That's another thing why this is such a hard trade to justify. We know what Paul George is. We know what he is at his best. I mean, he was really good in the postseason against the Boston Celtics, but we also know what he is at his absolute worst. There is not going to be any more surprises when it comes to the career of Paul George. I mean, maybe we would be pleasantly surprised if he played like the Paul George earlier in his career, but even at his best, he's not going to add a new dimension to his game. I mean, Jaylen Brown has done that over the years. He's become a better passer. I mean, I still think that's where he's most flawed. He's become a better defensive player. Is this really about Jaylen Brown as a basketball player, or is this about the financial implications of having two supermax contracts on the books? The answer is probably somewhere in the middle, but it's going to leave fans dissatisfied. Speaking for Celtics fans, a lot of us thought that this past season was going to be a really bad one, that they were going to tank, that they were going to get a high draft pick, that they were going to be a really flawed basketball team, and instead they ended up winning 56 regular season games. I get it. They blew a 3-1 series lead, and Jaylen Brown did not help very much in that department. And I can fully admit I was on board with them trading him away for Giannis Antetokounmpo. I wanted to see Jason Tatum play with an elite big like that. I thought those two could have formed a really dynamic duo. That seemed like a good plan. Now I just don't know what the plan is. Is Jason Tatum going to be given another opportunity to have a window of winning an NBA Finals? Yes, the roster itself has room for growth. I don't think we've seen what Peyton Pritchard is fully capable of. I mean, he is a former sixth man of the year. He could definitely be a starting guard who averages over 20 points per game. But defensively, he's not going to bring you what Jaylen Brown did. And my second favorite player on the Boston Celtics is Derek White. But all of this talk, what Brian Windhorst was saying on his podcast, that there are people on the Celtics who believe that Derek White is a better basketball player than Jaylen Brown. I don't understand what you're talking about. Defensively, Derek White is better, and I think he's a better decision maker. But I want Derek White on this roster, and unless you're landing somebody like Giannis, I wanted Jaylen Brown on this roster. Right now, most people are still talking about what this trade means about this one player. But what does this trade really mean about how the Boston Celtics feel about themselves right now? Because I think it's them saying, we're not that close to winning again right now. We do not think bringing back Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum was going to end up with us winning another championship. And in a weird way, I think this was the Celtics being very self-aware about what Tatum and Brown are capable of. I mean, throughout the regular seasons in their past, they have been more than capable of winning 50-plus games easily during the regular season. It's come postseason time that things can become a bit wish-washy between the two. And it's always worth mentioning the one time they won, they had Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. This roster does not have two players like them currently. Looking back at that Celtics team that won the NBA Finals against the Dallas Mavericks, I think that was about a great basketball team more than it was about two great individual players. I am a fan of both of them. I have seen most of their career games together. I would not describe Tatum and Brown as one of the best duos in the history of the NBA. We're not talking about Jordan and Pippen. We're not talking about Shaq and Kobe. Really, I think we're talking closer to Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, and maybe that's an insult. I get it. A lot of you will be irate with that comparison because Westbrook and Durant never won together. But when they were a duo, it was all about the talking heads like the Skip Baylesses of the world who were saying that was an overrated duo. And there's been a lot of talk like that surrounding Tatum and Brown. I mean, there are some Celtics fans who truly believed this duo should have been broken up years and years ago. Maybe Brad Stevens looked at the situation and said to himself, I don't think we're going to win a title next season. I don't think we're going to get closer to winning a title than we did this season. Is Jaylen Brown going to be happy if we are not competing year in and year out? I mean, that's another thing in all of this, is that Jaylen Brown has become more and more vocal about his opinions about the Celtics, about ESPN, about all the media coverage surrounding him and the NBA. If he has an opinion, he is going to share it. And yes, absolutely, there is a part of me that believes that the Celtics are keeping Jason Tatum and not Jaylen Brown, not only because they believe Tatum is the better basketball player, which I do agree with them on that one. I also think it has something to do with the fact that Jason Tatum is a good soldier. He is going to go along with whatever the team chooses to do. He's not going to fire back. He's not going to say publicly, this is embarrassing for the Celtics. He's just going to keep his head down and play the sport of basketball. It would be more than naive to think that the two personalities of these two stars did not factor into this at all. I believe most of the anger surrounding this trade is about what the Celtics got back more than it is about Jaylen Brown, the player, because I think a lot of us have seen enough of the duo that is Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. At its best, it can win a title, but yeah, that team was stacked. They might never be stacked like that again. There might not be another version of Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis coming aboard. I think the conversations surrounding this trade would have been better if it were for anybody other than Paul George. I mean, what if this trade was Jaylen Brown for Joel Embiid? Then we would be having fascinating basketball conversations like, is Jason Tatum and Embiid a better fit together than Tatum and Brown? That's really where I land on this trade. I think it is absolutely bonkers that the Celtics didn't end up with a big when they traded away Jaylen Brown. I mean, yes, I kind of got caught up in the idea that they would end up with somebody like Evan Mobley. But after years and years and years of people being critical towards the fact that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are too similar to make a great duo, you trade Jaylen Brown for another wing in Paul George, a guy who at this point in his career can only take corner threes. Basketball wise, it just does not make any sense, which is why I have to believe that Brad Stevens has a plan down the road to pair Jason Tatum with another star, preferably a big man. I like the signing of Mitchell Robinson. He's one of the best rebounders in the NBA, but I want to see Jason Tatum paired with a scoring big. I'm going to put this out there. I know that Paul George has a player option that we all think he's going to pick up for his second year with the Boston Celtics. I just have to believe, for my own sanity at this point, that there has to be something in place that's going to make it that Paul George is not playing for the Boston Celtics for a second season. This has to be a one and done type of deal. I just cannot let myself imagine that Brad Stevens has plans for not one, but 2 seasons of Paul George on the roster. I think this is a good note to end on, even though there are some people out there who do believe that Jaylen Brown is a tad overrated. They think it is a huge deal that he is now on the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, I think as of this moment, they are most people's choices for the second best team in the Eastern Conference, behind only the New York Knicks. I mean, how does Giannis feel about being on the Miami Heat? I mean, the Heat have talent between him and Bam, but can that team compete with the Philadelphia 76ers, who only had to give up Paul George to acquire Jaylen Brown? It is easy in the moment to feel good about the 76ers and really bad about the Boston Celtics, but we do have to let these things play out maybe Brad Stevens does have a grand plan that goes beyond next season. Speaking for myself as a fan of the Celtics, I was just interested in the idea of seeing Tatum paired with another star who wasn't Jaylen Brown and seeing how he would fit in with that star. I did not, in my wildest imaginations, believe that that star player was going to be Paul George, a guy who misses significant amounts of time due to injury and a suspension last season. I'm, of course, still rooting for the team. I'm still rooting for Jason Tatum, but I think next season could end up being a tough one for Gang Green. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every week on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so please rate, review, and subscribe.